I sat down with Secretary Spencer in a CNBC exclusive. We began with the state of the U.S.-China defense relationship. Take a listen.
The relationship, Morgan, is evolving, shall we say. We're switching from strategies here. We rolled out the National Defense Strategy last year. Secretary Mattis did. It's definitely a maritime strategy facing to the Pacific is the majority of the weighting of that strategy. We've gone from fighting violent extremists to the great power competition where we see China and Russia back in the mix. And it's changing the way we put our forward forces, deploy our forward forces. It also changes the way we fight if we have to. We look at China. It's a very complex situation, to say the least, because they're also a great trading power. When we had the Cold War going on, we didn't trade much with Russia. Now we have a major trading power as a competitor. You'll see this play out, I think, on a continual basis on how we maneuver and face off with China as they become more of a global power, and we have to protect the lanes of commerce at all costs.
When we talk about tit-for-tat tariffs, we talk about trade deficits. The other piece of this, though, is, of course, the ongoing militarization of the South China Sea. How is the U.S. Navy taking steps, if you are taking steps, to counter that, given the fact that those are very key global trade routes? One
of the fundamental tenets that the U.S. Navy works under is the freedom of navigation operative. And what that is that we will apply the open spaces, the internationally agreed upon open spaces of the ocean with our warships at all times to make sure that our commerce and our lanes of communication, maritime lanes of communication, are open. That is something we will always do. If China comes and joins the world and recognizes international rules and international law of order, we're going to have a great relationship. If they take this position that they're going to use their laws and their understanding of how they're going to trade in commerce and protect their spaces, we're going to have some sort of discussion about this going forward.
Now, another key trade route, the Strait of Hormuz, we've got Iran sanctions on that country coming in the coming weeks. There's been some talk out of Iran that they control that key waterway. What's your message to investors, to Americans, to consumers that could potentially be affected if you see increased activity there?
The fact is they don't control it internationally under a law of order, and we will make sure that those, again, lanes of communication and lanes of trade remain open.
Can we get to a 350-plus fleet? Do we actually have the capability here in terms of, when you look at the supply chain here in the U.S., it's certainly been eroded over the past couple of decades. We've got a finite number of shipyards that have also been taxed. Can we actually get there?
You've done your homework.
I've tried.
Yeah, exactly. Bravo to you. Yes, we can. But it's much like portfolio management. There are three services that have three distinct strategies on how we deliver the fight, basically. What we're doing in Navy with the nuclear triad, i.e. the Columbia-class submarine, the Virginia-class submarine, what we're doing in building carriers, these are large capital assets, long lead times. The past couple of years, 10 years, has challenged the supply chain. If I can tell you one thing now which is fascinating, the one thing that has done more harm to the Department of Defense and national strategy is the Budget Control Act. Budget caps.
Why?
Well, the budget capping process and the ability of us not to get budgets forward on continuing resolutions has cost the Navy alone in our computations $4 billion. Not soft dollars. This is putting money in a dumpster and pouring gasoline on it. The fact that we now have a clear path to two-year budget, Congress has gotten behind it, heard us, and said national defense is our way forward and we need to fund it appropriately. We will grow to 355 ships, but do I want to grow to 355 ships overnight? No, I want to do it on a stabilized manner.
The other piece of this, of course, is still steel and aluminum. You need a lot of those materials to build ships.
We do.
How are you thinking about the tariffs? We saw them put in place as a matter of national security on the one hand. On the other hand, it certainly helped push up the prices of those materials.
What's fascinating right now, and my information is probably 2 weeks old, but while we are letting contracts for new battleships and tanks and planes, etc., we are not seeing the immediate uptick in the prices. But what we are seeing are our suppliers hedging themselves, which they should, saying in the future we believe it will be increasing by X. So they're building that into the contracts, and what we're saying is fine. If it plays out that way, we'll pay it, but we're not going to pay for your hedge right now. But presently, we're finding a good supply at good pricing.
Now, Secretary Spencer also noted that the defense budget that lawmakers just passed this week, that it looks like it's going to be signed into law actually on time this year. If that happens, it's going to be the first time, according to him, in 20 years that we've seen a defense budget that was delivered on time. In terms of building the naval fleet and talking about his vision for that for the future, he sees it as a slow and steady process, a lot more technology coming into the picture. He cited AI and some of the other ways that they could envision modernizing that fleet. He also talked about the economy, his take on economic growth, that new upwardly revised GDP number this morning, and how that factors into the way this administration is building up this military right now as well. So it was a very wide-ranging interview. You can see the whole thing, actually, if you go to CNBC.com.